Okay, thanks everyone for finding your way down here. You must be very motivated to hear about the Drupal brand. Followed all those arrows. Yeah, okay. Big reveal this morning. Okay, so who are we? We are here to show you the new Drupal brand and to give you some ideas of the background and where it's going. My name is Suzanne Dergacheva, for those of you who I haven't met. I'm one of the co-founders of EvolveDrupal, and I also lead the Promote Drupal initiative. So if you're interested in getting involved in Drupal and you've never done so before, Promote Drupal is a great way. I'm going to be talking more about how to do that at the end of the presentation. And I'm joined by Morgan.
Hey guys, so I'm Morgan Guegan. I'm creative director at EvolveDrupal, and I'm here to support Suzanne to present the new brand, Drupal brand. And basically, so Sean Parrott, who's the creative director at Acquia, he did the work, but he couldn't be with us today. So I'm going to be there to be the backup vocals, try to do the present the work.
The designer in the room. Thank you, Morgan. Okay, so Promote Drupal, if you are hearing about it for the first time, it's actually a super innovative thing because what we're trying to do is an open marketing initiative. So you know that Drupal is, of course, open source, code contributed by thousands of developers, but we're trying to do the same thing for Drupal marketing and actually marketing Drupal as a product, which is a challenging thing to do. And if you have been involved in Drupal for any length of time, you know that Drupal means so many things. It's a community, it's a product, but it's also this very organic thing. But when you're marketing something, it's really useful to think of it as more of a product and what are the benefits and what are the features. And so Promote Drupal is all about trying to orient Drupal around the needs of external audiences, and to try to make sure that we have really clear messaging about what Drupal can do. So the brand, of course, plays a huge part of that. So being involved in Promote Drupal for a while, it's been really obvious that we need the brand to speak more to these external evaluators. That's been kind of one clear goal from the beginning. And at the same time, that really creates this unified voice. So if you have, some of you here work for Drupal agencies, I think. Yeah, some of you here maybe are like at client organizations, like organizations that are implementing Drupal end users. Maybe you've been exposed to a pitch of like, you should use Drupal for your website. And in either case, there's always like this agency involved, like EvolveDrupal, you know, we're always talking about, here's why you should use Drupal. But what's really valuable is we have this common voice of how we talk about Drupal. If you go to Drupal.org and you see a really convincing pitch, or you go and Google information and you're trying to find some demo videos and to see something that looks really, really solid and with one kind of clear message. And so that's what Promote Drupal is really aiming to do, is to create this really solid brand. And so when we started, just like any good marketing initiative, when we started, we were working for me the first little while in a sea of spreadsheets. So we created, you know, we did some surveys. We tried to get input from evaluators. You know, what are your challenges when you're considering a CMS, when you're considering your digital presence? What kind of things are you looking for? And what are your impressions of Drupal? And then we created some personas that are not maybe the typical users of Drupal.org, but that are the people that we really feel like need to hear these clear messages about what Drupal can offer them. And so we looked at, you know, marketing leadership, we looked at IT leadership, but we also looked at developers and builders and folks who are influencing all these decisions when you're trying to pick a technology. And we looked both at, you know, people looking at Drupal and comparing it to something like WordPress, which is like kind of a classic choice. I know when we started Evolving Web, we did WordPress and Drupal, and we were trying to figure out what is the audience for each one. But we also looked kind of at the market of AEM and some of these more like enterprise, traditional proprietary solutions and how Drupal is competing in that space. And so we came across these, well, we came up with these target audiences. And to me, the first two are kind of obvious, like if you're pitching to a big organization, often the decision makers are nowadays more marketing leadership, right? Maybe when we started using Drupal over 15 years ago, it was IT's decision. What platform are we going to use? Now, a lot more of the time it's marketing that's making that decision. And so a lot of our messaging about Drupal kind of has to be oriented that way. But at the same time, we have this other really important audience that we don't want to forget, which are the actual builders. So maybe you know, somebody reviewing their choice of technology platforms is going to be this decision maker, but they're going to be influenced by their team of builders. And maybe some of you in the room today are these kind of influencers, the people doing the work, who are telling leadership, oh yeah, like Drupal is a great option because it's so flexible. But they might be also telling leadership, oh, WordPress is a great option because I already know WordPress. Or they might be saying, AM is a great option because I went to their conference and, you know, they gave me a nice lunch. So we have to kind of figure out what are we competing with here. And so we have all that. That's kind of like our target audience who we're speaking to. At the same time, there's so much value in the Drupal community about the community itself, and trying to connect what's valuable about the community to these people who are maybe unfamiliar with Drupal and don't know what the word community entails. That's a big challenge. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest challenges that Promote Drupal faces. And some of you might be familiar with the Open Web Manifesto. Has anybody, you might have heard this phrase? Did you listen to the Dries note or been paying attention? So what's the Open Web Manifesto? It's basically this document that says, this is why open source is valuable. And this is why Drupal being open source is good for everybody. It's good for the people using Drupal, it's good for the people making websites, it's good for the people using the websites, and even the end users, that their websites are secure and respect privacy more and all these great things. And so we wanted to kind of have the brand be infused with this idea, because we don't want people to miss out. So part of creating the brand, we're going to get to the visuals soon, so you're going to see the more like talking slides. But there's also like a lot of narrative that goes into a brand, right? So we have now created, through a bit of this research and kind of going through what makes Drupal different and how we need to speak to these audiences, we've created all of these things. So we have a clear mission, brand positioning, as well as a promise and some brand pillars that we can use. And all of this is useful for building out messaging. So if I think, oh, I want to do a pitch and tell people about Drupal, what kind of words should I put into that pitch? We have a whole strategic framework with some messaging that ties into it. And so all of this is kind of the framework that we use. And if has anyone ever been involved in developing a brand? Sometimes it's more a visual exercise, but this is really the work being put more into the content part of the brand, the brand narrative. So we have a mission, which really comes directly from the Open Web Manifesto, that Drupal enables the next generation of innovators and entrepreneurs to compete. And a positioning, which frames, you know, where does Drupal sit in the whole digital ecosystem, and how should it stand out? How should it differentiate itself? But then to tie into this, there's really clear pillars that talk about the value of Drupal from all these different perspectives. And we tried to really tie each one back into like facts. So we have nice big headlines that talk about how Drupal is scalable and how that's going to benefit your content editor team. But then we try to tie that back to the actual facts of what Drupal's capabilities are, and to have a lot of good information to back that up for a more detailed kind of pitch that you might be getting. So we have this whole messaging framework, but alongside that framework, of course, you know, nobody's really necessarily going to pay attention if the words on the page just change. So if you go to Drupal.org and we have this whole new content narrative up there, you might not notice unless the page looks different, right? Like you might just think, oh yeah, I've seen that before, blurry eyes. And so it's been really important that alongside that, we've had this visual brand evolution that Sean's put together and that Morgan's gonna talk about. And maybe I clicked next slide too soon, but I'll let you talk.
Oh, that's fine, that's fine. Okay, but this is a video that shows the new iteration of the brand. There is supposed to be some music with it, but we have not.
Someone improv, just start.
Yeah.
Start.
You guys.
That's pretty good.
Let's get beatboxing, right? Yeah. But so, okay, so we see that there is, whole new color palette, beautiful color palette. I'm seeing a new font as well that's being released, use of photography. And so, and again, this is all to support all the messaging that we've been talking about. So all the strategic positioning framework is embodied in all these visuals. The use of color, again, I think we'll get more into it after, but it's always a good thing. New typography again. And I'm seeing that frame device that's a new asset that's really going to help with creating visuals and creating that brand expression. And that would be, I'm seeing these would be really good on social media. And then for all messaging, here we go, Drupal. Okay, good. I can do voiceover, right? What do you guys think? That was pretty good. Might change that here, right? Okay. All right, so. Well, yeah, so as I said, so Sean Perry did do the visual identity of this. And I'm here, to present it as a sort of a token designer that can present it. So my approach to presenting this basically is I want to do it more like an unboxing kind of way. Who likes unboxing videos on YouTube, right? I love a good unboxing video, so let's do it that way. And I think so the guidelines, I think so that's something that is actually going to be critical because well basically Drupal, the funny thing about this is that Drupal is an open source technology, isn't it? So the brand in a way has that approach as well in the way that people are going to be required to contribute to it. So that's a really important part of it, and the brand guidelines are going to be an essential part of the success of the brand. And like any brand, the success of the brand is adoption. So we want to make sure that it's adopted. And the guidelines are really the element that's going to help people get their hands in the toolkit and start using it and create all those iterations, brand expression. So let's go through the guidelines. So first of all, yes, there is all the strategic positioning that Suzanne's been talking about. I think it's all documented in there. So everything is there. I think we don't have that many here, but it's so these are the brand attributes, but I think there's lots more in that section. So you'll find all the strategic positioning, messaging frameworks in there. Okay, the logo. So if there is a new logo, who here does not see the difference between the old logo and the new logo? I don't see it either. So let's try to unpack that and see how different it is. Okay. Well, there is an explanation here of how it's built up. So there's the creator drop, which is the Drupal as an entity. Then there is the community, which is made up of all these elements in the middle. So several parts going together. So that's the community forming Drupal. And then there's the individual contributor in the middle. That's beautiful. And personally, what's funny is that personally, I see something else. And I don't know about you, but I see a tilted D in the middle. That's the D of Drupal. Who sees the D? Right? And I don't know, for some reason, nobody talks about this, but this is how I see the logo. That's it. So it's the D for Drupal. Okay, so again, new typography. if you guys remember the old typography, and I thought actually, so this is my contribution here, I thought it would be difficult to gauge and see really the difference. So I went back on Google image search and I did a little history of Drupal. So we get all the logo iterations here, so we can really have a look at how it changed over time, and we're gonna play spot the difference. So you see, so that was Drupal from 1 to 7, and I did reach out to some experts that have been here for like as far as they can count, and they validated with me. They were like, these are the actual ones, because on Google Image you can get like lots of different ones. There's like a weird Drupal 7 version, but actually it was not used. There's a Drupal 9, but these are the real ones. So started with the icon so that and it's more of a mascot. And I personally think that it is really why, you know, it became so popular. That personification of the drop is so beautiful. It's very catchy. And I think it must have been very trendy at the time when it came out, that sort of style. And so you got that embodiment of the brand. And you have the first time, so we have that font, which is a bit of a sort of a postmodern pop kind of aesthetic in terms of, and it looks kind of cool. And so it stayed there. So the font stayed there throughout the years. But Drupal 8, this is where things went a little bit wrong, because then it was like, well, it's Drupal 8, there's an opportunity to do something. And they saw something good. So check this out. You have the 8 and it looks like the eyes. So they went, let's do something special here. And they used the eyes, they did the 8, but then what do? Now we started something. We need to keep on going. We need to keep on iterating. And so I think this is why now we're going to do is just like the overarching Drupal so that it doesn't change it. But still, so it kind of tilted things off Drupal 9 and 10. And this is the version that we had. And there you see the difference. So very subtle, but it is better. So the font is more modern. The icon itself is thinner, it's more geometric. It's more appealing to the eye in terms of the way it is optically set. So it is more of an evolution. I remember Sean saying it's more of an evolution than a revolution. It's true, and it's a good one.
And now that you're presenting this, it really makes me think, you know, Drupal 9 to 10, we always say, oh, you don't have to do a big migration. It's a smooth transition, easiest upgrade ever. And at the same time, you know, we're trying to make these just now iterative little improvements to the logo instead of a big change like from one version to the next. So this is nice.
Okay, so let's go. Color. All right, and as you've seen before, so let me just go back here. Color, you see all these versions are slightly different, right? So all the colors, it's always been different. It's always been a pain point. And for the first time, we've got a color palette that's rolled out. Got a blue, that's the official blue. 009 CDE. Guys, write that down. I'm gonna use it every day from now on. And then we've got a broader spectrum, which is going to be really helpful to express different emotions, different states in the interface or things like that. So very practical with yellow, blue, and red, and then purple. Bit of femininity, which is really good. Good addition. And then, okay, so we've got gradients, and these are really, I think they really add some freshness. I think it's going to be super useful for any kind of visual creation, doing beautiful backgrounds, giving that sort of technology product vibe. I think that's a really good move. And then here, we've got, so that's one of the key things when we're developing colors, accessibility. Okay, so that's something like every time we talk to a client, accessibility is like one of our top priorities. So I see that, you know, make sure that all the colors, it's not that they're accessible, but it's very helpful in a way that he is telling us what color to use imposed with that background color so that it is accessible, right? So if you're using that blue, the black is use that for typography, and so that we make sure that whatever happens, it's always going to be WCAG AA compliant. Very, very important. Okay, brand elements. So that's the frame, and it's, you know, it's a graphic device, really going to be helpful for as a container for like photos, products, you name it. I think it's going to, you know, very versatile element, can scale different sizes. And, you know, I think the way I see it is it's a window, a browser kind of, right? So it kind of relates back to technology, the web, the open web. So And then patterns, we don't really see these. I think these patterns are like super cool. And they will be really good for swag. Anytime you need to brand a surface, just can apply that and it's really efficient. So very nice. Typography, again, so we've got that new typography, more geometric. And the previous one was a bit, as I said, it was like postmodern pop kind of aesthetic. But we do have a nod to that. Look at this. There's the alternative font that is also, there's the alternative that has that sort of quirkiness to it. So we can do a nod to the old.
Personality there.
Yeah. Okay, then secondary font, Noto. No, who's used Noto here in the past? Noto, it is not the sexiest font. We will all agree, but what Noto has for itself is that it is, for those of you who know, it's Google font, and basically it's the font that has the most character set in the world, and it's got the most, it supports the most languages. So that's really 10 points for diversity and inclusion. Very, very well played. And it even has an indigenous character set, syllabics, for Canadian, very important. So it does that, can support this. Putting it all together. So that's the visuals. We've seen some of them. They really come together really well in the video. I think for video it plays off really, really well. And we didn't think about it, but I didn't talk about that. But yes, so the frame can contain typography as well. And in motion, really, really beautiful, works well, very dynamic on social media. That's going to be very nice. For print, I think like we should print these for DrupalCon. These would be nice on the walls of DrupalCon. And some swag, very nice. As I said, like that pattern, you see how it's used for swag. That's it. That's what they're meant for. And the booth. Okay.
Yeah, this was even at a big conference in Portugal last year. The brand was already used at a big booth for Drupal. And so I was trying to convince them we should do this to convince the team. Maybe we should go to, what's the summit called? The Web Summit. This was at the Web Summit, but the one in Toronto is called Convergence? No. Collision. Sorry, Collision. That we should bring this to Collision. So maybe next year we can do that. It'd be cool. Huge booth. Okay.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, everything, all this has been documented on the DAM. And so knowledge management system, it's all in there. So you see all the guidelines and all that. So if you want to take a snapshot of this, you can. So you can access all the brand assets, and there's the URL right there. And so that's it. So then it's off to you guys, off to races to make this brand come to life.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about those kind of next steps, because we have lots of great stuff here, but we need to get it out into the world, and that's maybe the big challenge, right? So as the Promote Drupal team has been hard at work at over the last months, we've started the development of a marketing toolkit based on these materials. And the idea behind this is really spreading the Drupal brand and for it to be everywhere all the time. We want to facilitate that. So we want to make sure that every time somebody thinks like, oh, I'm going to put together this pitch deck, or every time I'm going to create a conference like EvolveDrupal, well, what kind of brand should I use? Well, let's use the Drupal brand. If I'm going to create like a LinkedIn post about how Drupal really shone on this project, maybe there's something from the brand that I can leverage. So we're putting together a marketing toolkit with some resources that we think people will find useful, but we really want to get people involved so that the resources in there are actually the ones that people want to use. So the first thing we thought of was pitch decks, because I think a lot of the time, as an agency, we are up against other platforms, and we want to make sure we really have the right information there, the right messaging, the right statistics, the right logos. And this can be a challenge, especially for marketing to kind of a new vertical where maybe they're not familiar with Drupal and we really have to sell them on it. And so we put together this initial kind of pitch deck template that speaks to some of the brand positioning, but it also has a lot of things in it, like these logos that we can draw from. And, you know, as an agency, of course, you have certain experience, you always want to put that into your decks. But since we're marketing a product here, we can also draw from all kinds of other, you know, statistics, logos that are generally recognized and speak to the, you know, the strength of Drupal as like a trusted platform for all kinds of different organizations, even case studies. You know, we want people to be able to use case studies, not necessarily ones just that their team has worked on, but like, hey, Drupal is used by all these other, you know, if I'm pitching to something like, you know, the Health Canada, I want to also say, well, Drupal's used by the big health agency and all kinds of other governments around the world. There's no real competitor there. It's more just speaking to the fact that Drupal is widely used for this exact case. So we want to have testimonials there from end users. So if you use Drupal at your organization and you want to add a testimony of like why you think Drupal is great, we'd love to add that to this repository. So there's a pitch deck, but this is also a lot of stuff coming from, you know, repository of testimonials, case studies, things like this. We also want to have like really good product screenshots and eventually demos as well, because I think really showcasing what the product looks like is something we're always trying to do. I think it's ingrained in people. Maybe for me, I listen to all these podcasts and it's always like, oh, easy drag and drop tools. All these site builder tools like Squarespace and Wix, they're doing these promotional campaigns. But for Drupal, we want to show, oh, well, Drupal goes way beyond that. We have, you know, easy drag and drop tools plus an amazing content model and, you know, enterprise grade stuff. And so we just want to have a pitch deck that kind of people can mix and match and say, here's the message that I'm trying to get across. And that's the idea of the marketing toolkit. So lots of stuff here. And one of the really important things that's in the brand narrative, but that we're also trying to, you know, weave into all these other things we're designing, is a message about why open source is better. Because I think one of the things we kind of often assume is that when we say open source, or when we say communities, people will think, oh, that's such a great thing. But we need to actually tell people why it's going to benefit them and what's great about it. So that's part of the marketing toolkit as well. So for one, you know, for one organization, you might be pitching open source in one way, really by talking about the fact that there's a diversity of perspectives that go into developing Drupal. And maybe for another client, you want to talk more about, oh, you don't have vendor lock-in. And you get all these new feature releases for free because it's open source and there's constant innovation. So the marketing toolkit's one thing, but there's been all kinds of other work that has been going on behind the scenes. And I think Shane is here. He's been working many hours on a lot of you know, mock-ups for the new Drupal.org, on a new information architecture. A lot of folks, myself included, have been working on case study guidelines to improve a lot of the content on Drupal.org. And actually going through the content on Drupal.org, looking at the analytics and seeing, okay, what content do we need to focus on and bring to the front, and what kind of, you know, wireframes can we create for those pages. So a lot of these key pieces are in place. Now we have the new brand, we have all this new messaging, and we really, what's the obvious piece that's missing? We need to redesign Drupal.org. So that's really like our big challenge coming up, is how we're going to get this project done. And this is just an example. You can see the new sitemap. Some of these changes to the sitemap, we've tried to make the changes that we could given the existing design. But I think you know, the redesign is definitely needed to create more of the menu structure that can support Drupal. And one of the challenges of Drupal.org, for those of you who know Drupal.org well, how many nodes do you think are on Drupal.org? Any guesses?
400,000.
400,000. Yeah, I would say that's a good estimate. I don't know, I didn't look up the actual number, but
Spot on.
yeah, let's say Martin's correct. That sounds about right. It's a huge website and it's used by all these developers and us, right? And people are like, oh, I'm gonna look up how to use Drupal for that or the issue queue for this. And so we can't just go around and say, oh, we're gonna cut it down to a clean 100-page marketing website. So goodbye, the rest of Drupal.org. We really need a plan for how to create like a clear section for all that development that happens, and then how the marketing website have the freedom to really shine. So how you can help, there's so many things we need help with. Applying the brand to Drupal.org is kind of the big thing that Morgan and I have been talking about. You know, how do we do this? How do we design nice components with this new brand? But there's lots of other little things that you say, I don't have, you know, the massive amount of time it might take to help with a redesign, but I want to just help with, you know, some content improvements. Maybe some of you have already has anyone here contributed to a case study for Drupal.org ever? Oh, this is a right place for folks to contribute. So if you've done a project on Drupal, you know, it'd be great to get a case study about it up. But more than that, it would be great if there was a case study that really highlights how Drupal helps with the project. So we have some guidelines around that, and I'd love to talk to you about it because it's kind of an easy way to come in and contribute on one thing, but that over time is going to make a big difference in terms of, you know, really convincing people that Drupal is a great fit for their project. There's also a lot of content help that we need, rewriting content. You know, we have pages that are great that talk about, oh, this is the technical overview of Drupal, but to try to infuse some of that more clear messaging into it, that's one of these big tasks. And then also there's an opportunity for event marketing. We're at this nice Drupal event today, but there's lots of events happening outside the Drupal community where Drupal can have a presence. So if you love going to events or doing presentations, we'd love to kind of enable you to talk about Drupal in those other places. And then just anywhere else that you can think of, you know, if you're active on LinkedIn and you want to post more about Drupal, we'd love to enable you. And there's really easy ways for you to just jump in and do, you know, contribution in not a lot of time, but make a big impact. So please get involved. You can go to drupal.org/marketing. There's a form there that you can fill out and say how you want to be involved. You can join us on the Promote Drupal Slack channel, or you can just come talk to me and we can chat about, you know, your ideas. And I hope we have a bit of time. Oh yeah, and of course, I'm going to leave up the QR code for the brand portal because we want you to bookmark this and start using it, start giving us feedback about it and showing us how, you know, how you find it useful in your day-to-day marketing of Drupal. And with that, I think we'd love to open it up to your questions and feedback and hear what resonated with you and what you're excited about. Yeah.
I just want to make a small talking about me.
Yeah.
10 years ago, I was in also an event like that about the launch of the new software, like a PrestaShop website, e-commerce website. And I asked this question, and I want to ask you also the same question. Is it possible, you know, to work offline with you know, localhost or stuff to learn Drupal, or we need to be already online to learn Drupal?
Oh, so can you learn Drupal just in having a local environment set up?
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I found really useful when I started using Drupal was to have, I think at the time I was using Acquia Dev Desktop. No, not when I started using Drupal, but you know, a few years later, maybe when I was teaching other people Drupal, it was like this tool that I could have locally that made it really easy. Just that, you know, one click, I can set it up. I know there's lots of different options for setting up something like that today. Is Dergacheva in the room? I thought I saw her in the elevator. No, she's upstairs. Does anyone have an answer? What's the easiest one click, like I want to install Drupal on my laptop thing?
So I would say the community right now is probably using DDEV most, but I've heard of the Starshot initiative. You'll probably hear a little bit about it later today. There's going to be like a launch button on the homepage of Drupal.org where you'll be able to click that and you can spin up Drupal It'll be in your browser, so it's not even like you install anything on your computer, you'll be able to sort of learn using that one.
So this will be, I need to go to the website, it will be informative. And after just click launch, it will be online, so we can learn by ourselves.
You can, yeah, so if you're accessing it, if you set a DDEV, so that's something that's gonna be running locally on your machine. So if you're using it in your browser, it's still just gonna be connecting to the code that's on your machine. Of course, you have to connect to download all the elements. And the tricky thing, of course, with something like Drupal is you often wanna say, oh, I need to add, like I'm developing something and, oh, I wanna add this extra video functionality. So I wanna add a module for this. And then to download the module, of course, you do have to connect and download something. But a lot of the other things like just configuration and writing code like this, you would be able to do
But I think it's more without having a hosting account.
without having
You
a
can
hosting
do
account,
everything
yeah.
on your local.
Not in the, not necessarily relying on having something in the cloud, yeah, which can definitely slow you down. I know we had our friend Jorge who started working at Evolving Web and he came from Cuba and he just was loving it when he moved to Montreal because suddenly he had fast internet. So like this kind of thing, like it makes a huge difference for his development. Any other comments? Yes, yeah.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Roman. I'm from Ukraine. Thank you guys for the presentation. I'd like to ask about what do you think about the impact of artificial intelligence on the work of designers' world?
Mm.
And do you use the benefits of AI in Drupal for Drupal? Do you think about it?
I think, should I take like on the
Yeah.
design side?
Yeah.
All right, so, yeah, very personal opinion, I think it's, of course, like, for me, like, the biggest impact so far, as a designer, has had to have been ChatGPT. Just because it's a, design, it's not just like crafting something, it's about thinking. So, and what you design is actually a manifestation of your thinking. So, just like asking questions, the ChatGPT is smart, so it's gonna, the smarter question you ask, the smarter answer you get. And so, for me, it's been invaluable just to hone in on the strategies, on, really refining what it, and helping me think about, the projects and all that. So,
You're working on prompts?
yeah, that's it, just, and not even like just a conversation, just having a good old conversation
No
with it.
design, no
Yeah.
journey, no AI generation. It's not giving you some examples of the work. Do you use it or not? Or only ChatGPT?
Well, so far it's been that, I think like I have been using, back in the day at Facebook, I did develop a system of illustration using Midjourney, but it was always to, do the last step or just add some details. It was basically like really quickly, it was to develop a library of images, but just to scale it up to 10x it. So we created a starter kit of illustrations, but then using Midjourney, we changed all the details, and so we expanded on the library really quickly. But so for designers, illustrators, I think like it can have like a huge impact. There's Reloom right now that's huge. There's a presentation today about this, like incredible. So I encourage you to check it out today. I think Anton Morrison is presenting it, and Joe as well here is gonna maybe present. I don't know if it's gonna be involving Reloom, but yeah, very, very powerful. And then like image creation, I think it can, it's like huge potential, incredible potential. Right now, I don't think it's right. And in my opinion, we're probably gonna get a divide is like, do you use AI or not? And I think some brands are gonna side with, actually, we're an authentic brand. We're like representing real people and we don't want anything to do with it. And it is gonna cost more because like definitely AI is gonna help brands produce content really quickly, and designers. And it's funny because I was talking to somebody the other day was saying that his client is telling him, no. Well, he's saying we need illustrations for our website. And the client is saying, well, you use AI to create those illustrations, but the guy is a designer, he's not an illustrator. So how is he gonna do that? The impact is actually, the expectation is changing. It's like, well, now you're a designer, you're supposed to create the illustration. I don't think that's the case. It's you're gonna have illustrators that are gonna use Midjourney and Gen AI, but they're gonna use it really fast, and so they're just, it's gonna dilute the market for sure, and some illustrators are gonna be like really fast, really efficient, you know, and create lots of imagery, but
And then from the perspective of what it means for Drupal as a platform, I think there's two sides, two impacts. One is, how do we integrate AI tooling into Drupal itself? Like people are talking about like, oh, when I publish content, maybe I want to have one of those AI suggested improvements links or something like this. Or even, can I use AI to generate the best looking layout? If I'm using Layout Builder and I just feed it like, here's all the content I want to publish, maybe AI can decide, well, this would look great as a big headline and this would look great. So there's those opportunities. Then on the other side, we're all building websites, and then how are people consuming that content? I think that's sort of the bigger thing of like, are people interested in using a website, or are they just going to get their answer from a ChatGPT type tool, and then that's it, they never go to your website? So we want to think about, well, how do we make sure that we're creating content in a way that's really well structured, really gonna get the right information to the person, even if they're not going to the website. And Drupal is a clear winner there because it's just so much better at giving you that kind of structured content, but it's still a bit of an unknown of how that's going to work. And if you're using certain AI tools, there's more traceability of like, oh, can I track back, like, where did this data come from? And it seems like Drupal would be good for this because it's gonna give you more structured data, but it's hard to know.
oh yeah, that's super interesting about like training the model in a way. And I think the paradigm has shifted and is probably gonna shift. So you guys probably read Zero Moment of Truth, which was released, I think, in like 2000 and maybe 7-ish or 10. It was released 2010 by Google, and it was their manifesto about search and search SEO. And what's funny is that when that happened, the paradigm in terms of branding changed as well. And it was not anymore that your brand is what you say it is, right? It became your brand is what they say it is, what people say it is, because it became about comments and you know, what everybody was feeding internet and those pages with them. It wasn't anymore about you. But I think now, so it's not anymore about what they say it is, it's gonna be about what the model says you are, right? So it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be about optimizing that.
Any other ideas or
I have a
comments?
question.
Yeah.
Let me stand up first. I'll just look on forward. So, from a development or coding perspective, I love the visuals, but what is the potential of customizations or integrations if I want to override or extract a component from Drupal, apply my own customization with my own coding language, etc., etc. Is this possible, or is this like a future potential you guys are thinking about, or I have to use what you provide, that's it, no customization?
You mean in terms of Drupal in general, when you download Drupal?
Not download, okay, we create websites, web apps with Drupal.
Mhm.
Okay, you provide visuals, already created components to create the web app. Am I correct?
That's not what, when I'm talking about the Drupal.org redesign, I'm talking about more of like what you're gonna see when you are researching Drupal as a product and you go to Drupal.org to see what is this Drupal thing. So the actual website is Drupal.org, but I'm not talking about changing necessarily what you get when you download Drupal,
Drupal CMS.
as a CMS.
Okay, let me rephrase.
Yeah.
Let's say we download Drupal CMS.
Yeah.
And I want to apply some customizations or changes.
Yeah.
And not just take what you provide as a color gamma or typography or frames or et cetera, et cetera. We have thousands of ways to customize using any coding language. Is this like possible or applicable to Drupal?
Yeah, absolutely. The Drupal is extremely flexible. And what we've shown today isn't even what you would get when you download the Drupal CMS. Like it's not the theme that you see. The default theme in Drupal is Olivero, which is a theme that, you know, widely used for very basic websites, basic needs that has work done in it. But For any project where you're trying to, you know, create your own product, create your own brand, create your own app, you would start probably from something much simpler, like you would use Bootstrap, you'd use Tailwind. You'd use something like this, and like when our team develops a custom app for a client, they're using that, so they're not gonna start with the Drupal brand, you're gonna start with something much more,
So it is possible actually to build my own brand.
Absolutely.
In my customization coding language or whatever language I'm using, but starting with a Drupal, let's say
Yeah.
skeleton or the frame itself.
exactly, and that's one of Drupal's biggest strengths, is the ability to do that, and to really decide what you want it to be, and even to decide, yeah, I want to use this front-end framework.
Yeah.
You know, you're not tied into.
I mean, just to add on, you can always go headless with Drupal, so like all your backend structure remains in Drupal and frontend you can choose like React, Gatsby.
Exactly, that's what I wanted to.
Yeah.
ask about. Yeah, perfect, thank you.
100%, yeah.
All right, we've got a question here.
Yeah, I'm just curious about, so like an open source project, doing the rebranding, getting involved, and then what's the process of, a consensus on like the design of the marketing?
It's a trick question.
Well, like anything, it's a bit of a duocracy. So if you say, I really have a strong opinion about this, and you come in and you contribute, you know, 200 hours of your time to get it done, you probably get to do it the way you want to do it. Because we really need people's help in implementing things. Which is a bit of a problem, right? Because we have like many agencies, many people who have time. A lot of people don't have that much time. So it's like, okay, you're gonna do this part and I'm gonna do this part. So we try to have these brand guidelines to build consistency. But this next step we're talking about the Drupal.org redesign, that's really what Morgan and I have been discussing, is the need to build components that people can use as like a design system to create the new you know, mock-ups and pages, so that we're not having many different people doing things differently, that the consistency is there. That's a huge challenge. Yeah.
Kind of follow, is this working?
Yeah.
Okay. And then a follow-up question to that is, so where are you guys at with like the implementation of code that supports these design components?
Great question. There's a prototype that was built for the new Drupal.org. It doesn't have the new brand, but it is on Drupal. I'm trying to think if it's on Drupal 10, but it's that was built out, and the Drupal engineering team it's kind of their role as gatekeepers of Drupal.org to implement a lot of the changes. But at this point, we're also looking for developers to help with that. So it hasn't been done, but there's been like kind of a first step of creating a prototype.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, great questions.
Are we at time?
We are at time, yeah.
There's other presentations. Is there one in 10 minutes?
No, we can go on to 11, so 11 is the next.
Oh, the next presentation starts at 11.
There's 10 minutes, yeah.
Well, we give people a little time between.
Yeah, 15
meetings. But if there's a couple more questions, yeah.
Hello, my name is Diana. I'm curious to know how Drupal works. How can we create e-com sites with Drupal?
That's a great question. So, Drupal has a ecosystem of distributions that have been developed. And there is a starter kit for creating a commerce website. Has anyone here used it?
Yeah.
The name of it is Drupal Commerce. This is there's a whole suite of modules that you can use for e-commerce.
Is it good? I used it when it was new and Drupal 8 was in, my name is Rob. I work for Consensus Enterprises. So I used it back in 2018 when Drupal 8 was in the picture. And it was not a good experience at that time because they didn't even had any buy now, the whole journey. They just had add to cart. So I would say after that time, like till now, it has improved a lot. And yeah, it's working.
I've used it, to add like a shopping cart for, like I work mostly with nonprofits. So it's not a sales organization, but I've used it to add like, for selling t-shirts for a campaign. And I only do kind of a subset of it. If you want, like if your site is primarily a store, you would start with the commerce starter kit and build your site around that. But it's Drupal modules, so it's incredibly flexible.
One thing I would say for sure that the company who uses it is like $1 billion company, and like they have products like more than $10,000. So like, they are still stable and they use 3 payment gateways using Google Commerce. So yeah, like when we delivered it, it was in a good state.
So there is like native econ neutral.
It's not native, it's a contributed module, which means it's something you're gonna add on top of Drupal core. But Drupal Commerce is used by a lot of folks. There is a big ecosystem around it.
And it's evolving.
It's evolving. It's a very highly flexible solution. So again, like Catherine said, like if you have needs, like you're building your website on Drupal and you need to integrate e-commerce and you need a lot of flexibility, Drupal Commerce is going to be a great solution. But then if you're just trying to really quickly get up and running with, I want to just add a shopping cart and I have 1 day to do it, you might be looking at using a third-party tool like a Shopify or something like this on top of your Drupal site. So that's another thing that a lot of people do.
Which is possible as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Last word goes to Jake.
Okay, it's kind of 2 questions, but pick whichever one you want to answer. So, well, the marketing stuff looks great. Oh, great. The writing stuff looks great. I'm curious of what was your biggest challenge, like today? And then what do you think, like currently, is your biggest challenge?
I think there's a huge challenge with it being open source around the governance because people have a lot of great ideas. I think we can all see going to Drupal.org today that there's so much improvement to make. But at the same time, people feeling ownership over, I can just go and improve the homepage of Drupal.org. There's a bit of hesitation there, which I think has really slowed our progress. And now, in the last months, we have a marketing committee that's part of the Drupal Association. So there's a lot more momentum behind it. And I think that's really helping move things along. And so then, and our biggest challenge going forward is just the fact that, Drupal Association resources, it's a small team, 15 people. And so just trying to get a huge project like this along, they really need support. And that's like financial support from sponsors and supporting agencies, but also like support from people just stepping up and saying, I'm going to take on this piece. Like I'm going to build out these Figma files and get this part done. So those are the challenges. It's all just around organizing resources and,
Cool.
and that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.